Most developers appoint a main contractor. Others think they can do it themselves and pull in all the subcontractors and run the project themselves. We've spoken about this before on previous podcasts, and we think this is a huge mistake, especially if you're just starting out or moving on to your second project or something to that effect. As an alternative, there are companies that can help you with the construction management that can save you time, money, quality, and save you thousands across the whole development.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Property Developers Playbook podcast. The show...
Keep going.
the show built by developers for developers. I'm Kieron Shepherd.
I'm Jonathan Stobbs.
And if you're new to the show, welcome. And if you're coming back, welcome back.
In today's episode, we're talking about construction management, and we're joined by Andrew Doidge from We Are Ease, one of the Southwest's leading construction management companies, where we will break down how developers can manage cost, quality, and time through their project management. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, guys. Cheers.
So we're going to dive into that a little bit later, but before that, we've got our usual big question of the week, and we jump over to Faith to give us our question.
We don't have a jingle yet. Still.
No,
we need a jingle.
We're working on a jingle. Okay. This is the evolution.
Big question.
Okay. What percentage of SME developers appoint main contractors over other procurement methods?
Okay.
You have to say it back.
Yeah. So they'll go over it again.
What percentage of SME developers appoint main contractors over other procurement methods?
So what percentage of SME developers appoint main contractors over other procurement methods? So I'll start off, and I think as main contractors and SME developers, I'd like to think they haven't been starting out. I'm going to say 70%.
I'm going to let our guest go next because I want to gauge it. I want to see where they are.
I would probably say 80 to 85%.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I think it's high as well. I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to go 90. Faith,
okay.
What is it?
Put us out of misery.
54%.
Oh, wow.
54.
That's surprising.
Again, we think that's madness.
That is surprising.
Yeah.
Why do we think it's that low? Why would it be that low?
People think they can do it themselves.
Yes.
People don't spend the money. Or they have overpriced it or something like that, is what I think.
Or they actually have some form of contractor experience or knowledge where they think they can apply that by actually utilising direct labour and sourcing materials in cheap to build it out themselves through friends and other associates within the industry, no doubt.
Yeah, well, I think it's spot on there, actually.
A lot of people coming off the tools. But we've had people contact us who are on the tools at the moment, and they want to get into property development, but they just don't know how to do it, or they don't know the kind of risk factor that they can take. And this is where we can help them, and hopefully the podcast will be able to help them make that jump.
Brilliant.
So Andrew, thanks very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Very much interested to find out what is or who is We Are Ease. Please tell us about yourself, what you do.
No, thanks for having me both. Where do I start? So We Are Ease is a construction management consultancy. The company first began in sort of 2010, so we've been operating just on the best part of 16 years. The company was set up by two co-directors, Dav Hollyman and Andy Cook, both from sort of traditional design and build backgrounds. Worked with the likes of McAlpines, Kears, sort of back in the sort of mid to late 90s, and having sort of been working for those sort of larger PLC type companies, they saw an opportunity in the market really to sort of explore other procurement methods whereby using their own sort of buildability, knowledge and experience that they'd sort of gained through those number of years they'd worked for those companies to sort of think, how can we deliver projects differently that actually gives value to the client, as opposed to necessarily benefiting the contractor, so to speak, through the typical sort of design and build or traditional process. So they formed We Are Ease, and construction management as a procurement route, they felt actually gave the client better opportunity to have flexibility during the construction phase, found it slightly less litigious, and were able to actually make key decisions that otherwise they might not have the benefit of making, whilst the guys are on site delivering the build. So our team at the moment consists of 22 strong sort of senior project managers and quantity surveyors in their own right. Some also site managers as well. And they are the key guys. They are the boots on the ground that bring that knowledge and experience from inception through to completion, whether that's us being involved from sort of REBA stage 2, helping sort of bring together the initial design team consultants, planning consultants, assisting with the initial sort of cost plans and viability appraisals before we actually progress with any of the detailed design. And in some instances where the client has gone up to a traditional tender sort of procurement method and the numbers aren't working out and they've sort of scratched their head and gone, how else can we do this? And that's sort of very often when we sort of get a Friday afternoon phone call to sort of say,
can you
help.
start Monday?
So in the main, that's who we are really.
Okay. So I was just thinking about it. You're actually competition to Kieron then, as the main contractor.
In a roundabout sort of way.
Yeah. Well, it's quite a funny position because I think in many ways you think that, two sides of it.
Yeah.
But I think myself and most main contractors just want to see people doing it right, whether or not it's going to a main contractor. But there's nothing worse because ultimately, I find, and again, this might just be a chip on my shoulder, but somehow we get blamed for it anyway. You know, Because what will happen is they'd usually get the call on the Friday of them saying, "I've had all these costs back. The builders are taking the piss. You know, we're getting all these prices back." And actually, what I would rather is the third person to come in and say, "Are they? Let's actually look at it. Let's break it down." Yeah. So I like it. I just think I want to see people get it right rather than go for the cheap. I mean, nothing worse than they go for the cheapest price and it all goes tits up. Everybody's out of pocket and it's a shit build.
And then they blame the builder. The builder gets a bad rep all the time. Yeah.
So I think that's why I'm sort of an advocate for it. Really, that's why I think it's a good thing. And for me, it's learning. You know, it's what these guys do day in and day out. So I think it's really good. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, you know, we're very diligent in that side of our processes as well. And in the event we do get that sort of Friday afternoon phone call, we sort of say, look, more than happy to take a look through the information and actually appraise, as you rightly say, Kieron, those sort of initial submissions ourselves. And more often than not, if we look at them and we go, actually, it's probably round about there. And therefore you might need to consider, you know, the other cost commitments that you've made that are potentially impacting the viability. However, it might also be worth going back to the drawing board, maybe exploring some value engineering alternatives, go for a PVC window system as opposed to an aluminium, and sort of take them through that journey to see whether there's significant savings that can be made to then hopefully kickstart the project.
Do you only work for clients or do you work for banks as well? I was just wondering whether there's scenarios where banks step in and they appoint you. I know, like, they'd work with a QS and a monitoring surveyor. Do you fulfil that role as well, or not?
Not necessarily directly to the bank. We'll often work with sort of clients that have obviously acquired some form of third-party lending for the project. And then as part of our sort of on-site services, you know, in terms of the overall commercial oversight and delivery, we'll work with the appointed sort of independent or bank monitoring surveyors that subsequently come down, assess the interim valuation payments, making sure that the drawdowns are sufficient for the works that have been completed on site. But going back to your other point, conversely, we have had situations where, unfortunately, because of the way that the industry has been over the last sort of 12 to 18 months, you do find that there have been main contractors or builders that have gone bust, which therefore has left the banks with first charge position to come and take sort of ownership of the site. We've sort of had many experiences of that, whereby in the first instance, they sort of come to us and say, look, we've got first charge on the site. We could actually do with somebody of your experience and expertise to provide us with a cost to complete exercise for us to actually establish how much it's going to take to build out the remainder of this project, and ultimately whether they're willing to sort of bear the time and cost implications of that. Some of them, you know, go thanks, no thanks, and we've had others where they've gone, great, we're going to give you an instruction in the next couple of weeks, please mobilise and gear up ready to take over the project and see it through. So and I think genuinely that is one of the added benefits of construction management. You know, it's that ability to mobilise quickly, because it's fairly easy for us to have an assessment of the incumbent subcontractors that were already sort of working on that site, whether it be electricians, plumbers, you name it. And because under construction management, you're entering the trade contractors into contract directly with the client, or in this case, it might be the bank, it's very easy for us to just do a quick reconciliation on the works that they've produced, forecast the remaining works that need to be completed, tie that up under a new contract as long as they're happy to do so, and sort of re-engage with them so that they can get back on the ground and go from there.
And what kind of projects do you typically oversee?
Great question. So I'd say over the last 15 years, we've done a range of projects. I mean, we've done 10 years worth of CapEx works for the Eden project, doing the rainforest biome, canopy walkways, to very large 6-7 bed bespoke houses in sought after locations such as Salcombe, Brock, Padstow, as well as hospitality. That's been a real sort of niche arm of our company in terms of, we've done lots of work down at Watergate Bay Hotel for Will Ashworth, one of our clients down there. Subsequently, his brother Toby over on the south coast at the Nair Hotel. We've done works with the Brend Hotel Group, Nicholas James Group. We did a £15 million hotel over in Salcombe for the Harbour Hotel Collection. So, a big range, but we feel that we're adaptable. Yeah. And I think that's why.
What is so obviously you do really big projects.
Yeah.
What's the smallest project that you'd look at?
So it's funny. I mean, we sort of advocate CM on the basis that the benchmark really is £1 million upwards from a build cost perspective, in order for the value to sort of see the true value of construction management. Yeah. Albeit having said that, we've done stuff as small as £100,000, which is for clients more so where the objective is time and not necessarily cost. So that specific project was for a private school in Truro. Obviously, with the term times, it was to sort of reconfigure and extend the existing sixth form block. And they had sort of approached us through an architect that we had collaborated with quite recently, and sort of said, look, term ends in July, we're back in September. How soon can you actually price up the scope and get boots on the ground? And we managed to actually set up in the first week of July, and we delivered literally on the 8th of September, allowing them to sort of furnish the sixth form block ready to open up to the school in September. So that was a pretty fast-paced one, to say the least. But again, just going back to my point about that quick mobilisation, it sort of negated the need for that sort of protracted tender process, so to speak, by sort of going out and getting through. They just didn't have the time or the luxury to go through that process. And I think as long as we were able to provide, which we did, that sort of robust early cost appraisal for them to go, we're happy with the budget, and the design was basically fixed at that point in time, so it was just a case of placing those packages and get going.
That's pretty cool.
I was going to say, just it might be helpful for people viewing or listening, if we could just break it down, if maybe a new developer came to you with very little experience of construction management, project management, maybe if you could talk through the stages. So if I came to you, I've got a site, I'm ready to go, it's all good. Where do you start and where do you finish? How does the process look from your side?
No, absolutely. Very much so the starting point is, where are you at in terms of the whole development? Have you got planning permission? Don't you have planning permission? Where are you at in terms of the design progression? Is it just early concept for now? Have you had any sort of third-party cost consultancy advice or input? And then sort of going through those motions to establish, okay, well, what is it you actually need from us in the first instance? Do we actually assist you with just appraising the design as it currently stands, engaging with somebody like Rebecca from Coast to Country Planning to just see that actually what you've designed is compliant in the first instance, which then evolves into a process of us actually establishing, is it buildable? And is there other methods of construction that we could potentially review or endorse to actually make this more feasible for you? And then just sort of take them through those early sort of pre-construction motions, right? Actually considering, okay, well, are you happy to continue with the existing architect that you've worked with through the stage 2 plans? Is there somebody else that you would rather engage with? Is there somebody that we can bring to the table to actually then progress through the REBA stages, identifying those sort of gateways and cost limits at each stage to just make sure that the design doesn't run away with itself? And I think one of the sort of other, so I'd say key part of our services is we have such a great rapport with our supply chain. So if the design is in a position where it's sort of got to stage 3 and it's got planning, and before the client wants to commit to that sort of detailed technical design pack in readiness for sort of the building regs application and submission, we're actually able to engage with our supply chain quite early, just to get that early contractor involvement, to just sort of allow them, in conjunction with us, to appraise the design, to sort of say, this is what it currently looks like. Do you have any ideas on how you might potentially do this different? Is there an alternative specification or considerations that we might be able to use for the client's benefit? And I think once you go through those motions, the client really truly sees the benefit of that early involvement, that input, that advice, that experience, to help them get the best out of that pre-construction process before actually getting boots on the ground. Whereas biasly, I would say that is something that we consider certainly as one of our USPs, and I'm sure Kieron might disagree coming from a main contracting background, but what you tend to experience on the flip side is, with a main contractor or a design and build type procurement model, you'll actually find that the design is set if it's traditional. If not, you design and build, you get a set of employers' requirements where you sort of develop the design. And during that construction phase, you actually have the power to change the specification yourself and try and sort of make those further savings, but for the benefit of you as the main contractor, as opposed to the benefit of the client. And I think that is how we sort of try to dissect it, just to not encourage them or biasly sort of say this is the procurement route you have to go with, but it's just trying to really make them understand the key differences and what we perceive as the benefits of construction management.
It's interesting because on previous podcasts, Kieron has even said, get a contractor involved early doors, like you're saying, speaking to the supply chain and the people involved in it for, is it buildable, how can we improve the efficiencies of the build, etc. So I think that's very key. A lot of clients don't do that. They wait till they've got their full pack and then go out for the tender, which again, we've spoken about before. We don't like the normal tendering process going on. We would much rather, a different way of doing it is the client pays for a QS to cost up the job, then go to a contractor and say, right, my budget is this, can you build this for this? Rather than going, well, seven contractors give us price, and then trying to pick and choose, compare apples for apples and things like that.
No, exactly.
Negotiate a tender way better than open book almost.
I couldn't agree more, Jonathan. And I think, one of the other key benefits with that is the time. Because it's very easy for clients to sort of lose 6 to 12 months going through that protracted tender process, appointing a sort of third-party PQS to do the analysis and reconciliation on those costs, as you say, to make sure they are apples with apples. Only to get that time down the line and go, well, it's not affordable, and you just think, okay, in those 6 to 12 months, you've not only wasted the time to not be able to mobilise, but you've then got to consider the cost increase on materials, inflation, all of those sort of things that are now going to even more so impact the viability when you eventually do come around to start the build.
And everything that's been going on in the current economic climate, and that you've experienced with material prices increases and everything else since COVID, has had a massive impact, the fuel increases, etc. So something that people need to kind of take into account.
No, absolutely.
I think also the certainly in my opinion, I think pre-construction is so important, and I think
massively.
Ultimately, the everyone's goal is to have a successful project, and I think for all main contractors, even builders, I think their success lies in the success of the project. If that doesn't happen, if that's not a successful project, it's not profitable, it's not going to work for them. So I think any good main contractor, any good builder is going to try and do their utmost to help themselves, like you said, which makes sense as a business, but also help the client and make those decisions. And I have a little network of sort of SME main contractors, and us directors, we chat and sort of look at it and say, what can we do, how can we help the client rather than waste time and money and things early on. And what we tend to find is what happens, and I think architects always think I'm digging them out on it, but what happens is they go through the sort of Reba stages with the architect. It gets to that point where they want to take this on further, and they'll act like the QS. They'll become the project administrator. They'll take on these roles which I don't think they should, and I'm not saying they're all bad at it. I'm just saying I don't think it's the right place for them. And I actually really like the idea of this being a client's project manager. I think this as an external takes it from that stage, and then then uses a main contractor or many contractors, subcontractors, depending on the scale of the project. I think it's really good because the third party, that person, that role is really important in those two positions as a QS and a contract administrator.
Mhm.
But an overall project manager from the client.
I think,
Is it valuable?
especially if you're starting out and you've never done this before,
Yeah,
it's great having someone like that who's got all that experience that they can call on, and also the network, because we always bang on about having the core team or the team of people that you can use for your developments. You've already got all of that.
Mhm.
So getting
Yeah.
your connection, you opens up a huge network of people that you've got access to.
No, absolutely. And I think, the other sort of added benefit, if you like, is that because once we take the client through those pre-construction motions, we eventually and hopefully are then appointed to actually deliver the project
Yeah.
as principal contractor,
Yeah.
so that actually by the time we get to site, we've already addressed all of the potential risks, as you
Yeah.
rightly say, Kieran, during that pre-construction process.
Yeah.
So with the exception of, any sort of later client-led design changes or
Yeah.
etc. that typically is managed, right, whether it's traditional contracting or CM.
Yeah.
As I say, you're already aware of those eventualities, so to speak, before you even get boots on the ground. So, yeah, I do think it's equally as important.
So you said there about acting as principal contractor. Do
Yeah.
you become the main contractor, or do you act through the client's SPV
Yeah, so,
as contract management? Again, I know we've spoken about construction management, but actually
Sure.
break down what does that entail?
well, for the benefit of the listeners, in terms of the principal contractor services that we
Yeah.
offer, consider it as we basically provide everything that you would typically expect from a main contractor
Yeah.
in terms of quality assurance management, health and safety management for CDM and BSA, the Building Safety Act. We do the commercial, operational, program administration, all the way through from start to finish,
Right.
in the same way that you would probably do yourself, Kieran. The key thing with construction management is just the contract relationship is different. So unlike a traditional tender where the client just appoints one single contract to a main contractor and then he is responsible for taking through the
Yeah, he takes
delivery
over
with
the sites and everything,
exactly.
yeah.
We procure all of the individual trade contract packages, whether that be steel frame, groundworks, masonry, whatever, and we actually enter the client into direct contract with those subbies, and then we do the whole administration of those individual trade contracts
Okay.
through detailed programming, understanding the milestones, the interfaces between design, release, procurement,
Yeah,
start
yeah.
on site, etc. So yeah.
How does that impact with regards? So if the SPV or the client is the direct contract with the trades, do they then do all the CIS and stuff as well? Is that something else that you take care of?
Yeah, it's not usually part of our services under the construction management remit.
Okay.
So what we typically advise is that, especially when it comes to VAT, CIS, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
that typically we would advise them that they have to have their sort of third-party accountant that would
Right,
help
okay.
them deal with that on that side of things.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll go through those motions to even firstly identify whether the employer actually needs to register as a contractor for the purposes of CIS in the first
Yeah.
instance or not, depending on the criteria and the specification of the project.
so it's quite interesting. You're almost removing the main contractor role.
Yes.
You take the principal contractor element, you take that,
Yes.
and the leftovers, you hold the hand of your client,
Correct.
to take on those roles.
Absolutely.
which makes sense.
No, absolutely. And
I get it. It's sort of, which again I understand then why probably larger projects or $1 million plus makes more sense again, because there's a lot more
Economies of
involved.
scale, isn't it?
Exactly
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Which it brings us on to the next bit, which is on our last podcast, we basically spoke about cost control and value engineering, which you touched on a little bit earlier. How do you find that in today's market? A lot of change in specifications. One of the things we've noticed, architects like to specify what's easiest for them, not what's economically viable from a developer's point of view to make money for the developers.
Sure.
How do you find that in what you do?
In fairness, we've not had many issues with it more recently. I think sort of going back closer to the COVID time, obviously there were certainly more difficulties with trying to introduce new specifications or products for the client's benefit. But at the end of the day, we sort of see it as in, the client ultimately has a brief, right? And they'll have a certain desire for a specification or quality of the product that these guys want.
Yeah.
In some instances, they'll have an open checkbook and money's no object, and they can have what they want. And other scenarios, I really like the look of that aesthetically, what other products are on the market that we might be able to substitute that with that might save me 10, 15 grand just on this particular package. And I think that's sort of going back to where the relationship with the supply chain is so important, right? Because you can actually have those open conversations with them, not just between us and the supply chain. There's instances where we even get the client involved in those discussions, and we sort of allow them the opportunity to present those alternative products to just sort of see whether it's something that they would even be willing to entertain, and try and go through the process of, okay, what is the overall savings? Is it going to increase X, Y, and Z? And so all in all, it's okay. Touch wood at the minute.
Okay. We've seen again before architects, civil engineers, structural engineers doing a certain type of specification or something. Is that something that you would take care of during the pre-construction phase to make sure that it's the efficient way of building it, like you were saying?
Absolutely that. And I mean, because of the wealth of knowledge and buildability experience that we have within the sort of senior team, and even more so leaning on Dav, our managing director, who's as I said sort of earlier in the show, sort of 15 years experience of building these magnificent type projects, and really just trying to say, okay, well, that's great, I like what you've designed. We're doing concrete podium slab with steel frame on top. Is there a consideration that we actually might just do this in full concrete frame, so that you're then omitting the cost associated with the fire and the acoustics, because we might be able to do a METSEC infill system, or and those conversations are really what builds that picture and adds that value for the client to go, Christ, didn't even think of that. Or the engineer just might have gone, I just want to do a steel frame. No, it's like, okay, well, have you considered this?
I think that's the biggest thing, because people who don't know. And this is where, if you've got people with experience like yourself and Kieron, you can at least get guidance from people who've done it before and who've got experience from loads of other projects that they've used different materials.
Absolutely. I think a really good example would be, about 2 years ago, we finished the East Wing hotel extension for down at the Nair. Logistically, as complex as you like, so access, material storage, you name it, that there were a lot of hurdles that were put in front of us, and as the sort of design developed, we were sort of envisaging a sort of concrete in situ slab, first floor slab, and immediately you start thinking, that's great, I think that's where the design needs to go, but where are you actually positioning a concrete pump? Because you've only got one very narrow sort of public access road down to the beach. We're going to be doing this in the season where it's going to be most busy. Maybe let's consider precast hollow core planks, right? And just see if we can actually set up a mobile crane just within the little footprint of the site that we've got, just to actually swing them into place and drop them on the steels, and that will probably help the build be a bit more efficient. So around the table we went, absolutely. And that's just an example of that sort of that early involvement during that design process, to really sort of, because it's not always about whether design works. It's about, can you build it?
Well, So we've seen things before, like we were saying before the show. Just because you've got planning drawings doesn't mean it can be built.
Sure.
You've had the conversation with architects before. It's like, well, how are you actually building that?
And they're always quick to sort of be like, well, we haven't been commissioned to undertake the later stages and full construction plans for our level where we are, certainly on the residential builds, $500,000 to $1 million. Sure. You find that, and also a very rushed pre-construction. When you start talking about, they're like, well, no, I just want to start. And you're like, well, no, we need to go through.
There's a process.
Your program starts here, but ours starts a bit further back. So that's important, and those conversations, like you say, because it's valuable for the client and the project.
No, absolutely, can agree more.
What do you think is one thing that developers should question more often than not?
What a great question. Where is the design at in terms of affordability before I actually progress with a technical design pack and building regs application? And I think we've touched on this a moment ago, but you very often see, unfortunately, that clients can sort of be dazzled by this great design as you get to sort of stage 3, and it's all sort of hands on deck, right? Architects love it, proceed with a technical design pack, and as that evolves, you eventually then get given this stage 4 pack, and you can cost it up, and it's like, well, that's $1 million over my budget. And it's like, well, did you have the cost exercise done when you actually had the stage 3 drawings to just firstly ensure that what was conceptually designed at that stage was affordable? Or no, I just assumed it could be. And I think that would be our overarching advice is to, be patient go through those gateways, go through that process as Kieron was mentioning, make sure that you identify and establish those cost limits first before you then commit to a tranche of later led design sort of consultancy fees before actually establishing whether it's affordable or not.
I guess if developers are building a plot of land or houses on a plot of land example, it's best to secure the site either through an option or something, and then go through all that pre-construction before you actually complete on the sites.
Yes.
And then get your funding at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've done sort of residential developments in the past where it's been very much that. They've been sort of offers subject to planning, bringing the likes of Rebecca on board to sort of just go through those initial appraisals. How many units can we get on there? How does that impact the overall sort of GDV? And we sort of then retrospectively sort of calculate the build costs and how that might fit, and provide them with that sort of upfront information before letting the sort of the axe fall, so to speak.
I'm going to ask the question. I don't know if you're going to answer it.
Okay.
What do you use as your build cost rate when it's at that pre-design stage? Is there a blanket? Do you use SPONs or BCIS rates, or depending on where you are?
So there's a mixture, and it'll obviously, for sure, and it will sort of very much depend on the project, right?
Yeah.
Because there's some that the client has inherited an existing structure that's got shell and core, and they basically just want to fit out with an element of external works. Some of them want to demolish it and then provide new builds. Some of them are existing that they want to build extensions on. So because of the array of experience we've had of those types of projects, we're actually fortunate enough to sort of rely on our benchmark cost per square metre rate history from those projects. Obviously with the allowance of inflation, right, for over the years that have gone by, specifications. But we do have other sort of, tools at our disposal, so to speak, in the industry, such as BCIS and SPONs, just more as a cross-reference check, I suppose, as well as being able to sort of reinforce our own findings or interpretation of what it is. I think it's very easy to just sort of say, oh yeah, it's a bespoke house, just allow £3,000 a square metre, right? Because that just seems to be the go-to rate for everybody. Yeah. But it's like, okay, well, what does that include? Have you considered the logistic considerations, the abnormals, because, all right, it's very easy to just sort of say, well, rule of thumb prelims is 10 to 15%, right? It's like, okay, well, you've got nowhere to put a cabin. How are you actually getting deliveries to the site? We're going to need banksmans. We're going to, it's really a holistic review of what you need to consider before you just start throwing cost per square metre rates around the room. And obviously, as the design sort of evolves, you're able to have more detail, more specification to sort of reinforce those rates that you're putting forward. But they can range from £1,500 a square metre if you're just simply doing renovations, refurbishments to fit outs, to we've done stuff that's sort of 4.2, 4.5, bespoke residential projects, because it's very high end, open checkbook sort of type stuff. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, it's kind of the answer that everyone I would expect, because it always come down to specification. I mean, any builder, when we talk to yourself and other contractors, like, well, what's spec? And what's involved in it, and until you've got all the detailed drawings, it's very hard to put a figure on it.
I think you do start somewhere, and I think certainly you'll look at something, and I think you'll have a figure, and then, like you say, we actually went on a site visit yesterday, didn't we? To it's more than a potential project; it's a project that we're actually in negotiations with the client. We actually recorded it for socials as well. But that was one of my initial sort of pre-construction sort of site visits. Just look at the logistics, look at the little track you've got to go down, and some of the things you're saying, and
how the service is getting there,
how the services, what's existing, all those sort of things. And it's just making those notes, and then we'll discuss that figure again and look at that, because ultimately people want an early figure so they know what they need to tweak.
No, absolutely.
And you just sort of keep tightening it up, don't you, as you move through? It keeps getting tighter.
100%. And even indicatively at the start, they can just sort of say, this isn't a high spec, I literally just want a box standard sort of Howden's kitchen or something like that. And as you're sort of piecing the puzzle together from the costs, you can just allow sort of benchmark provisional sums for that. And then if that changes, you can sort of do the change control management of identifying, well, we only had £6,000 in, and now you want a 12.5 grand kitchen, and you've just got to take them through that sort of those motions and that process to really understand why things cost what they cost.
One question I didn't ask at the beginning is, where does We Are Ease, what's your kind of area of coverage?
Yeah, so our headquarters are in Ivybridge, which is very central for us in the sense that we tend to deliver everything across Devon and Cornwall, predominantly from sort of coast to coast. We can't always sort of specify or desire where we want those projects to be. We've got to go where the work is, right? And hence the reason we sort of cover those areas. However, historically we have gone up as far as the Lake District, which was sort of at a request from one of our sort of main clients who was sort of expanding the empire, so to speak, sort of had acquired a hotel up in the Lake District. Nice. Wanted to invest in sort of reconfiguring, refurbishing and extending that. So because of, the quality of service we'd provided him for the 10 years down at Watergate, he sort of said, look, I don't want anyone else to do this. I really need somebody I can trust to go up there and potentially bring up some of the supply chain from down here if they're willing to travel, as well as managing and coordinating the supply chain up there. So for the right client, we would obviously put a sort of bespoke team together to go up and deliver that, but predominantly we sort of stick to the southwest.
Okay. I think that's always a big thing. If you are going to a different area, you don't want to kind of start all those discussions again. You want a network and people that you can trust on the ground. Yeah,
absolutely. And look, even when we're put in those positions, we still very much do our due diligence, right? When we're engaging with contractors we've not yet previously experienced, we issue the pre-qualification questionnaires just to make sure that their health and safety accreditation is up to speed. What do their quality assurance management systems look like? Just to make sure that we've covered all of those potential risks on behalf of our client.
Mm-hmm. Through the projects that you've done, is there any key project lesson that you've taken from them that you always look out for going forward?
Yes. Design is everything.
Design is everything.
Design is everything. Okay. And I mean that sincerely in the sense of, whilst a lot of the clients that we work with have the ability and it's at their discretion to make certain design changes whilst we're sort of during stage 5 in the construction phase, which more often than not we try to accommodate in the best way that we can, whether that looks like not actually adding any sort of extension of time to the program because of the relationship we've got with the supply chain. We sort of try and make it work within the original timescales, whereas conversely another contractor might start rubbing their hands and going, right, okay, so variations, additional prelims, prolongation costs, that type of stuff. But for the client that really wants to build something fabulous, but there is still a cost objective to this, is really trying to nail that design down before we actually get on site, and just making sure that every possible component, with the exception of FF&E if they've got a separate budget allocated for that, but certainly up to sort of finishes, packages, floors, decorations, tiling, establishing that specification, trying to provide them with samples, etc., and as far in as advanced as possible, so that we can actually try and get those costs nailed before we actually get to site. If time is actually sometimes the more objective, we actually procure probably 75 to 80% of the higher risk packages before we get to site, and then we can use typical sort of benchmark cost per square metre rates, right, for plasterboarding, tiling, etc., that will just stay as prime cost sums until the point that we get further into the project where the client goes, right, I'm ready now to start looking at, swatch charts and samples and various other bits and pieces. So there's flexibility in the process, but if you don't get it right, and the design is left slightly open-ended, the implications that can then potentially have on the program are significant. And it's trying to just put those key milestones in place if indeed it is you want to wait to sort of procure those packages whilst we're on the ground. But our advice is always try and identify something at the outset, at least as a benchmark, so that you negate or mitigate that risk, so to speak. So
do you find a lot of your clients are hands-off completely, or do they want to be involved? As an example, we're currently converting an office into 9 apartments in Saltash, and we've got our floor plans done. We've done all our design. We're kind of happy with everything. Then we started putting out the floor plates for where the walls are going to go, and we go, well, actually we could do this and actually make the lounge living area a bit better, make the whole functionality of the rooms better. Is that something that you do with your clients or allow your clients to do, or you do?
No, absolutely. I mean, they hold the keys, right? And they hold the checkbook. So sometimes there'll be a conversation where they'll think of something extravagant and go, I just want a lovely big glazed opening here. And you're like, well, I get it. but it's not going to be compliant with building regs,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's a hotel, as an example, then I don't want manifestation on the windows. I'm sorry, if you want to sign this building off and operate it, that's what you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
But going back to the sort of point about maybe potentially changing net internal floor spaces or what the function of those rooms look like, absolutely. We give them that flexibility and we give them that option because, you know, it's their project, you know, and we're just here to as the facilitators of that, basically.
I have been guilty of it because I know we've been talking about these vaulted ceilings on the top floor.
Yeah.
And actually, Kieron was right to kind of pull me back and go, this is a project. It's cost, you know, time. We don't need all that. It's not going to add extra value to the development for doing it. So we've left that part because ultimately that's what the main thing is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about making money out of this.
Correct. And that's where it sort of probably differs somewhat in terms of what we do, how we manage our projects, the clients we work with, to the likes of Kieron, who in the sense is the developer, right? It's about maximising value as well as maximising profit, right? That's what we're here for. So that's business, and sometimes you have to compromise on aesthetics. You know,
don't get too emotional.
It's those sort of things. It would be nice to have, or people picture themselves in that property. They'll think, oh, if it was mine, and it's like, no, snap out of that mentality. You know, I'm used to dealing with that with residential clients, and they do it a lot. But it's their budget, and you know, one of the things we always get to that point and have those conversations with a new request or a variation, and you'll say, you don't necessarily break it down like this, but it is a time, cost, quality breakdown. Isn't it? You know, this is what it's going to cost. This is how long it's going to take. And this is the quality, or this is the thing that needs to sign off by building control or planning issues or something like that. So and it's weighing those up and just saying, these are the facts. How do you want to deal with it?
How do you want to deal with it? And that's, I think, very much part of the process, right? It's just arming them with the information to make decisions, maybe not necessarily allowing them to make the decisions and then retrospectively telling them the impact afterwards. And I think, in fairness, that's what we're pretty good at, you know, because as I said before, with that rapport with the supply chain, we're able to turn around those variation quotations quite quickly. What does this look like? What's it what impact will it have on your program? Is that something the client wants to consider at this stage, you know? So is there a lot of advice given to clients because of your previous experience and projects you've worked on where you've gone, this really worked, do this? Is there any kind of where developers should spend their money on to focus on rather than and other cost saving areas? It's a good question. I mean, usage of the space internally, sort of, especially if you're actually converting maybe existing buildings into apartments, you're sort of like, okay, you want 12 apartments. The build cost is probably not going to differ too much, but then when you actually consider the GDV, if you were to just do 10 and make those slightly bigger and maximize the value on those, you're probably actually going to make an extra sort of 2-3% potentially. And it's just that sort of constant food for thought in terms of what it is you can do.
It's not all about mess, is it?
No. Exactly, right. And that lends itself to housing developments as well, right? You've got 2.5 acres. It's like, okay, we want to get 25 houses on it. It's like, whoa, you've got to then consider all the services, drainage, all the build costs associated with those additional sort of 3-5 units, where actually your GDV probably would reflect better if you actually just did 18 to 20, right? So, and that, again, that just goes back to that pre-construct, going through those motions. You need the advice, you need the appraisal and that assessment to help you be most informed before committing to something.
So you would advise most developers to kind of get in contact with you at very early stage?
Yes.
Even before any kind of concept designs, actually get you involved in. If there's a plot of land, it's like, how can we maximise this?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because of our experience with those residential developments, and I think because of our connections within the industry, like Rebecca, like certain architects that are very niche at those type of developments, we can bring those in early, and some of them don't even charge because they're part of the process, right? They want to collaborate, they want to see something succeed, and it's a very sort of round robin table discussion as to, okay, what do we think we can do here? How do we maximise the potential for this plot of land? Rebecca, is this even going to fly? Do we just leave it now and just maybe identify another site that might be able to accommodate what it is you're looking to achieve? So very much so, early sort of stages. And
I think there's a huge amount to be said about collaboration at the very early stage, getting other people's input into it.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, that's part of our sort of pre-construction mantra is because of the relationships we have with architects, engineers, MEP consultants, you know, it's bringing those disciplines and those specialisms to the table to really sort of collaboratively assess what is the right thing to do here. What other options have we got, you know? And as I sort of said, just get that in early, definitely.
How are you finding AR changing things?
Very good question. It's something that we've obviously cracked down on as a business, and we ensure that all of our internal staff specifically know the boundaries. It's not to be used as primary information that then is just put onto a bit of paper and issued to clients, right? It's what we consider to be an efficiency tool. Yeah. Okay, it's you've received 50 Bradford's invoices, right, that aren't reconciled. They're not scheduled in a table anywhere to show you sort of total values outstanding this month. Yeah. If you want to put those into an AI software that can generate you a consolidated sum that gives you accurate invoice references and breakdowns, what would have taken a QS 2 hours to do that is just taken 5 minutes, right? You then have to do your due diligence after and just do your cross-reference checks and that sort of stuff. But that's how we sort of, you know, primarily use it. Interesting. As opposed to anything else, because we like to think that it isn't needed as a tool because of the expertise that we have as human beings within the business.
Staying on the theme of sort of technology, really. Just got a question about sort of BIM and VR and that sort of thing. Do you get involved in that? I know a few architects that are moving towards that a lot more, sort of even on the lower value projects.
I'll be honest, we haven't. No. And, you know, I've certainly not experienced BIM in my, 10 years I've been doing this. And I've always sort of associated BIM with more sort of public sector projects when you're sort of dealing with NHS, MOD, that sort of stuff, where you're really trying to hone in on the clash detection between each of the disciplines. And none of the architects or engineers that we've worked with, I would say, in that time have adopted it either. In terms of sort of other digital softwares and solutions, particularly from a cost planning perspective, we do use sort of like digital takeoff software. So we use a company called Causeway that allows us to do sort of bills, takeoff and billing, CAD measurements, whether that be using sort of DWG files or it can even import sort of PDFs just to give you very quick sort of gross internal floor area measures, depending on what you're looking to do. It is far in the detail as sort of really detailed sections and wall types and build-ups and that sort of stuff. So, and the great thing is that you can then sort of populate that all in line with sort of NRM measurement rules, and then at the end of it all, it exports a lovely Excel document into a price document or a schedule of works or whatever you want it to look like in readiness to sort of send it out the door for tender. So we found that massively beneficial.
When you're going through the construction phase, do you have software to keep the clients updated? Like you were looking at a software recently,
like Procore or anything like that, Trend or anything?
Not so much from a client update, as in that it's like an automated system that provides or generates a report right at the end of the week or the end of the month. But we do use something called Plan Radar, which is very similar to Procore or Field View or other types of softwares that are out there. But we specifically inherit that to do our health and safety and our quality management assurance. So it's great. It's a common data environment where you can sort of import drawings. You can raise non-conformances for trade contractors. If you sort of walk around the site and go, well, that block work's not level, you sort of put that onus on them as part of their QA to make sure that they're signing off their work properly, and we can sort of manage that in a central environment, so to speak.
Got access to this.
So the subcontractors get their own sort of login, and they're able to sort of we pull up a drawing, haven't done a site visit, we take photographs, and when you can raise like a pin on the drawing for the location as to where the non-conformance has happened. That will then get sent over to the subcontractor in an email, and then there's a process where they follow to sort of go out, rectify the non-conformance, do a sort of formal sign-off procedure using the software, and then all of that data is just stored in one place, and it just saves you having files and paperwork, and we've got to move with the times. This is a much more sustainable consideration now, right? We can't we don't want to just be printing off reams of paper of check sheets, and we've got to move with the times,
and it's speed, isn't it? That's the thing.
Absolutely.
I still remember, and we still in some cases still use paper, and it's but having a central system like that, I think is so valuable, isn't it?
No, massively. And look, we're somewhat old school in the sense that we still like to print the big A1 drawings to scale, because it's great having them on a bulldog clip in the office, because once you're doing sort of site meetings with the subbies, you want to be able to print, have them in front of you to accurately assess what it is, whatever it is you're discussing. But
from a little handheld, it makes a big difference.
Right. But if you've got iPads and stuff and you're doing an initial site appraisal and you don't want to print off 400 drawings that you've been given, you've got all that access digitally on an iPad, as long as you've got a cloud somewhere in reasonable location, then I find that really beneficial.
Awesome. Fantastic. So kind of really final questions. Where can people find out more about We Are Ease, yourself? How can they get in contact? Website, contact details. We're obviously going to put all of this into the show notes for viewers, listeners to be able to get in contact with you if they have any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So we run our business on referrals first and foremost.
Okay.
We don't typically tender as a company. It's just not something that we've ever engaged in. We tend to rely on word of mouth, business reputation.
Okay.
Whether people know other consultants in the industry that we work with, architects, planning consultants, people that have experienced working with us in the past that are big advocates of construction management and the benefits that we feel that it brings.
Yeah.
They'll have new clients and they'll sort of make those immediate introductions, and we'll sort of go through next steps. But conversely, if you don't know anything about us and you don't have any of the consultants that know us, go to the website, go to LinkedIn. We have our own Instagram page that you can sort of see the types of projects that we've delivered and how we've sort of led the client through that journey, and there's a range of testimonials on there from sort of clients' experiences of us. So and likewise, you've got myself as the sort of main point of contact. So you've got my details. If there's anybody that sort of gets in touch following this session and they just want to drop me an email or give me a call, then please feel free to do so.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
Well, if you've enjoyed listening or watching us on YouTube, thanks very much, Andrew Doidge, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Do reach out to us if you've got any comments about today's episode. Then drop us a comment. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Jonathan Stobbs.
I'm Kieron Shepherd.
And speak soon.
See you soon.